This is your Chargers linebacker, Derrick Henry, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dale Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Happy Sunday. Happy Football Sunday. Hope everybody is doing well. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us because we have Monday Night Harbaugh on the horizon. Chargers versus the Baltimore Ravens. Lots to get into, lots to discuss. And as Dan and I love doing live platforms like this, because outside of the key matchups and stats that we want to get into as it relates to this key AFC matchup, we want to answer some of your guys' questions as well. So get in on the comments, ask as many questions as you can. We will try our best to get into them over the next hour or so. But Dan Wolkenstein, happy Sunday. Good morning. How are you? And what the hell are you drinking this morning?
Good morning, Chargers fans. I got my coffee in tow. I've got, we're getting close to peppermint season, so I'm going early. So I made myself a little peppermint mocha. I'm pumped. I'm jazzed. Let me take my first sip. Oh, the sweet taste of 7-3, Chargers fans. Feels good. Welcome to Chargers Unleashed Live. Jake, what are you drinking, my friend?
I've got nothing. Strangely enough, I've got nothing. I don't even have water with me. Admittedly,
stay hydrated. Come on.
Admittedly, because I was rushed when we were coming in here, so I didn't have the opportunity to get anything. So, yeah.
Good. Let's see. We asked what folks are drinking. Robert S. says he's drinking some coffee. Going to be sipping on some bourbon for Monday night's game, though. That's right up Jake's alley. Mm-hmm. Charles, Daily Morning Grind Coffee. Found this great coffee in Moscow, Idaho. Is that a city in Idaho? Moscow.
Well, coffee's your thing, Dan. Sweet. So he's speaking your language.
Yes, and Chris says water. So Chris is going the Denzel Perriman route, staying hydrated, drinking water. Bull fam, if you have questions, topics, thoughts, whatever you want to talk about, put in the chat. We'll do our best to kind of sprinkle them in as we go through. Again, these are for you. We love doing live shows because we get to interact with all of you. Take 20 seconds while Jake talks about our best friends over at BetOnline, our other best friends over at BetOnline. While he discusses them, hit that like and subscribe. Leave a review, comment, whatever you want. Go get some coffee, get some bourbon, drink some water. Jake, let's talk about our friends.
Yes, I want to remind everybody that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every single week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of up to $200K. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or online with one of our 150 slot games. Head on over to the website today. That's betonline.ag to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Friend of the show, Brian Rick. Pumped for football, brothers.
Big Brian's here.
Brian, good to see you, man. Good morning. Excited times for this Chargers team. Jake, do you want to just start right off into some questions folks have?
Let's go.
All right. Brian Lewis, does Minter change his scheme to stop the run game or keep a light box?
I'll just use the simple answer that Chris Rim said when he joined the show earlier this week. Figure out a way to stop Derrick Henry and then pray. Trust me, after the Baltimore Ravens gave Derrick Henry only 13 carries against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, they are not going to make that mistake again, and I'm sure that Jesse Minter is anticipating that. So he's going to have everything that he can in order to stop Derrick Henry first before anything else. And it's going to be a tall task for that, considering Denzel Perriman's status for this game. So how are you going to supplant that? And Jim Harbaugh had mentioned, Troy Dye and the rest of the linebacking crew having to step up because most likely you're going to be having Deion Henley probably as the spy for Lamar Jackson throughout the majority of this game, whenever he may break out on a run, because you know the type of threat that he is when he gets mobile. So it'll be an interesting thing, but I'm guaranteeing you that's probably Jesse Minter's first priority as it relates to how they're going to try and stop this Baltimore Ravens offense.
Yeah. Next question from Alan. Do you guys think Chark is still injured? Emphasis on still and quotes around injured.
I don't know. He was a healthy scratch last week for the Bengals game. I haven't heard a peep about it during this week's report. Wasn't on the injury report at all this week. So you would hope that he's going to play this game. This would definitely be a game I think that he could be utilized very well against this Baltimore secondary. We've seen him active previously. I think the one game that he was active, he had what, Dan? I think it was 5 snaps throughout the entirety of the game. So everything that we've been led to believe with DJ Chark up to this point has been kind of just a mirage. So I'll believe it when I see him out there on the field.
Matthew Dahl says, what up, guys? Hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Very grateful Jim Harbaugh is our head coach and Trump into office. We don't do politics on this show, but I think we can all collectively hope that these next 4 years go great and go America. Sure. But yes, also hopeful that Jim Harbaugh has brought this team into some winning culture, Jake, which you talked about on this last episode where we talked about kind of the culture defining moment that this Chargers team just had at 7-3 with that win against Cincinnati, which, by the way, I was at the Cincinnati game, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when they beat them there too. That felt real good. Cameron says, bold take. If we beat the Ravens, we're running the table. Okay. and bringing us right back down to earth, Jake. Great.
Hey, look, it's bold. It's bold. I'll give him that. It's definitely a bold take. You would love to see something like that happen. But I think the Chargers have already had their quote-unquote trap game that people would want to call it. You look at the Arizona game for the way that they performed, and I definitely think that they're not going to fall back into that again. But you got a tough next 5 weeks ahead of you with the Ravens, with the Falcons, with the Chiefs, with the Broncos, with the Bucks. It's a tough way to close out the season. So I would love to see him run the table, but I think highly unlikely.
Yes, and bringing us back down to earth is girthy guitarist. I'm excited for this team, but the big but. If they don't beat the Ravens or Chiefs, I'm not really hopeful that they go deep into the playoffs. Again, Chargers fans, let's manage our expectations and remember what they were going into the season and how much this team has overcome in just one season. And so if the bar is a deep playoff run, was that the bar going into the season? Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't.
Also have to remember that think about what this Chargers team looked like offensively throughout the first month of the year compared to what it's looked like since the bye week. It's looked completely different. It's another reason why you see the Chiefs fan base and the Chiefs narrative not making too much of a big deal about them dropping a game to the Bills, because it's not the postseason. And sometimes a loss teaches you something by the time that you come to the playoffs, and you play differently come playoff time. So I wouldn't put all my weight into if they can't beat the Ravens Monday or if they can't beat the Chiefs next or 2 weeks from now, that's any indication of what they can or can't do come playoff time.
Honestly, we looks like we got questions for days. We're just going to continue down this rabbit hole of questions until we can get folks to not ask questions, which fine by me. Charles, son graduated from Idaho, doctor of kinesiology. Awesome, dude. Congrats. Chris, this is a loaded question. How do we stack up against the Ravens compared to the Bengals?
Well, oddly enough, the same issues that we talked about from a defensive perspective as it related to the Bengals are very similar as it relates to what the Ravens do. They're not too good when it comes to defending the pass. Outside of Kyle Hamilton, who, to his credit in coverage snaps, has not allowed a single touchdown all season long. Outside of that, they're susceptible to the pass, which speaks directly what you would probably expect another game for Justin Herbert to have coming off of the heels of the Cincinnati game. This is definitely where I think that the Chargers are going to look to attack. Do I think that they're still going to run the ball? Yes. depending on the success of that, I think Travis Jones being active or inactive come game time is going to play a huge marker into that. Them obviously not having Roquan Smith, not officially, but looking that way because he has not practiced all week and he's one of their leading tacklers on defense. So that's another big factor there.
The leading tackler.
But I think when it comes to the passing game and how the Chargers can attack this, I think you can look to very, very similar type of situations in the way that they did against that first half in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Cincinnati's defense wasn't great, and they played pretty good at the end of that game, for sure. Ravens defense isn't great either. 24th in points, 27th in first downs allowed. I mean, their defense isn't wonderful, especially the back end. Their front seven, it's a Baltimore Ravens front seven, as you would expect, but their back end is not great. And if no Roquan Smith, that's huge. Huge. I know we'll talk about Denzel Perryman now being out. I think Roquan Smith being out is a much, 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 much bigger deal. But again, that Ravens defense, they're pretty good against the rush. It's the pass they got to look out for. Now, I guess that bodes the question then, Jake, for you, I think for Chargers fans. If you were Greg Roman, how would you combat that? Like, would you just air it out and become kind of one-dimensional? Let Justin throw for 45 times this game? Lean on him to wear the cape? Kind of punt the running game to the next day? Knowing the Ravens offensive line or Ravens defensive line is pretty stout against the run? If I know one thing about Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh, they are unapologetically themselves, and they can give a damn what the other team is good or bad at. So I don't think they're going to abandon the run, but Jake, what do you think that they should do?
No, I don't think that they're going to abandon the run. I know when they were talking about the run game specifically against Cincinnati, and when people were bringing up questions about why Gus Edwards really wasn't featured in that second half, Jim Harbaugh's response was he felt like JK was giving him the best opportunity, that he had the hot hand. I would expect, especially considering the way that both of them meaning J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, have been talking about this game and all the connective tissue between the Chargers and the Ravens, and then possibly being looked at it as a revenge game. Expect to see more of a two-headed monster in this game, and expect it to be used much more efficiently throughout 4 quarters. Not that you're going to go away from Justin Herbert, because I think that they have figured out since the bye week and these 4 straight wins that they have rattled off, that formula works, what they have going for Justin Herbert. And the way that he is playing right now is what works. And the way that he is utilizing his mobility right now works. So I don't think you're going to go away from what works. And they have proven that. And whether you want to consider it a good or a bad thing, you look at the way that second half started for the Chargers against the Bengals. They were still in that mindset of putting their foot on the gas and going with what had worked in the first half. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to execute it as well as they did in the first half, which I'm okay with, because traditionally we've dealt with former regimes and head coaches that you have great first half of stuff that works, and then all of a sudden you just get amnesia and they went away from it. It does not seem that Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman are of that same mindset. So I would expect a much more balanced offensive attack from Greg Roman this time around, and whatever works, whether you're doing it through the air or through the ground, does not matter. How are you going to find a way to put up points?
It would send shockwaves and chills through my body if they bring DJ Chark out for a bomb on this game. Just like, let the cat out of the bag. You're waiting 12 weeks. And honestly, I've thought for the last month that that's probably what they are trying to do, is if you don't need it right now, wait till you do. And when the opportunity presents itself, I mean, would you expect DJ Chark to go deep right now if you're the Ravens?
Well, let's get him active first.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I say.
The Chargers are 7-3. He hasn't done a damn thing. That's pretty wild. When the Chargers fans were up in arms, everybody was, that the Chargers offensive weapons and the receiving core hasn't been great. And they're 7-3 with the receiving core without him. Like that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. Chris says, look, the Browns beat the Ravens and the Steelers. Just saying. Yeah, the Ravens have some bad losses. They got bad losses. We talked about that earlier in the week. Any given Sunday, you just saw that Browns game against the Steelers. Granted, that was like in a snow globe, but still, anybody can win in any game. The part that I do think is just box office for this game, Jake, which we'll talk about here in a second, is just like the overarching dynamic of Harbaugh v. Harbaugh and all of the connecting points of this game is just made for TV. And I would imagine, if you're the primetime folks heading into Monday night, like you have so many storylines to make up a 4-hour show pregame. I mean, you can go Harbaugh v. Harbaugh. You can go the Roman Minter of Baltimore days. You can talk about all the players that have played for both teams. The resurgence of Justin Herbert. The rematch of post-Super Bowl Harbaugh v. Harbaugh. Getting his revenge. Expectations for this team. The Chargers have a better record than the Ravens right now. Like, what? What? Nobody expected that. If the Chargers win this game, the Ravens have 5 losses. They're already second in their own division right now. You got Lamar Jackson coming into town versus Jesse Minter, which that I'm excited for. Jesse Minter just got, I don't want to say exposed. Again, we talked about the defense was kind of left out to dry last week. They gave up 14 points on 2 fourth-down plays. But the storylines of the Harbaugh is just awesome. And the pregame hype for this is warranted. And people were pumped about that Bengals game for good reason. Level up for this one, guys. Buckle up.
Yeah, it's going to be huge, Dan. We'll get into, more so of the coaching matchups just in general a little bit later. But everything from Joe Ortiz to Kyle Van Noy, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Bradley Bozeman, Hayden Hurst, just from a player standpoint, a front office standpoint, from the head coaches themselves, from the fact that Jim Harbaugh still to this day has not beaten his brother in the NFL, like going 0 for 2 in matchups and one of them being a Super Bowl. There's plenty of storylines here. And it's Monday night. It's another prime time back-to-back for the Chargers coming off of their win in Cincinnati. I mean, there are so many elements here. It's an AFC matchup. It's pivotal for playoff seeding. It's however you want to slice it. There are so many things that are going on with this. Cut it however way you want to put it.
Look, I mean, imagine being Harbaugh Sr. right now. Like, he's probably literally talking to his entire family, like, who's got better than us? This is awesome. I get both my sons out here playing football, like 2 great teams. Like, those genes are running great. So Jason says the Chargers team is the most dangerous team in the league, with 2 exclamation points at the end of that, by the way. No one expected us to be in the spot, and they have nothing to lose but everything to gain. That is a dangerous position to be in a good way. This Chargers team is playing with house money at this point. I think everyone kind of had the bar outside of the building as get to the playoffs, and a playoff win would be gravy. 7-3, you're firmly in the 5 seed right now. But the most dangerous team in the league? I think those folks in Detroit say something different. I think Buffalo might say something different. Hell, I think still Baltimore would say something different. Chiefs, obviously. There's a lot of dangerous teams. I wouldn't say the most dangerous teams, but a dangerous team, sure. Do people want to play the Chargers? No. But that's an achievement in its own right, Jake. Like, this Chargers team has climbed to that tier of folks don't want to play them. Whereas in the past, let's be real. We know what this Chargers team was, and we know what they were known for. People weren't scared to play this Chargers team. I think they are now.
Yeah.
Chris Pepper, thoughts on Mack and Bosa on next year's team? Talk about a buzzkill.
I mean, why don't we just enjoy while they're on this team playing together right now? I get it. There's some big decisions to be had next season as it relates to contract issues. much like in the way that it was this past offseason when the Chargers had to navigate a bunch of things just to get underneath the cap, considering the extensions and the numbers that they had to work through. I feel like we have gotten such a scarce time with Mack and Bosa on the field, which is wild considering the fact that they have been playing together for the past 2 years. So however you want to slice that, the fact that both of them are going to be playing this game is huge. And let's just hope from the standpoint of health-wise that they continue that for the rest of the season. And let's enjoy it while we got it.
Yep. Kevin says, this game, go off tendency and run right. Run right at Kyle Van Noy's side. Joe Alt, delete him. You run right?
I mean,
I'm running anywhere. I don't care.
Kyle Van Noy is still having a great season. I don't care what you say. I don't care how old he is. He's still having a great season. So it's a big test for Joe Alt. If you want to run into that right side, yes, Joe Alt himself is having a good season. I think it's another great test for him. Let's see how it goes. Yeah,
I mean, the dude I think he's got something like, I'm trying to think. He has 14 quarterback hits, Kyle Van Noy. 33 years old. 14 quarterback hits, 7 sacks. Like, let's talk. I think he has the leading tackles for loss on the entire team. So if you're talking about run at him because that's what you do to pass rushers, sure. But run at him because he's a bad player, like, let's keep that in check. Guilty as charged in the chat. What's up, fellas? It's a great week for Darius Davis to get back in the end zone. Am I right?
This is your question, Dan.
Yep.
Dan Wolkenstein is all about number 12 getting in the end zone.
Yes, I would love to see Darius Davis in the end zone anyway. I don't know. Like, this is a stupid way to think about it, but would you rather see him in the end zone on offense or on special teams?
I don't care. Because one way or another, it's telling me one of two things. One reason, let's just say he got into the end zone because of special teams, we're going to stand up and we're going to applaud the great job that Ryan Fitkin has done with him since he's been with this team. If he gets in the end zone on offense, like, all right, Greg Roman is finally utilizing Darius Davis in some capacity and drawing up plays for him, which we have kind of seen sparingly over the last few weeks. But if you were to punch one in the end zone, great. I don't care. Get him into the end zone. It's going to be a great thing.
This is a good point by Chris. Feels like a game similar to Arizona, big running back and speedy quarterback. 100%. 1,000%. This is just an Arizona team on steroids, in my opinion, with a better defense. At least we thought. That Arizona defense played pretty damn good that game. But the formula is kind of the same for me in this game. Like, that James Conner, Kyler Murray kind of formula that we talked about, it was like, just keep him contained, no crazy breakout plays, and you're sitting pretty. And they didn't do either of those things. And like, everything that could go wrong went wrong in that game. They had terrible ball bouncing luck. Like, it was brutal. Similar in this one. If you can make Lamar Jackson a pocket passer only, which, again, this guy's going to be the MVP again. I have on my fantasy team for good reason. It's hard to contain him, right? But you just try to limit as much as possible. But if you can limit him in the pocket and you can keep Derrick Henry serviceable, don't let him go for $150 and 3 touchdowns, you should be okay. But if Lamar Jackson goes for, 220 passing, 95 yards rushing, Derrick Henry goes off for 120, like, that's where you lose. Give up a busted coverage, touchdown, 70 yards to Zay Flowers. That's how you lose. If you keep making them beat you by dink and dunks the whole way, I trust Jesse Minter and company to get turnovers and to make stops and keep them out of the end zone. But if you give up busted plays, similar to what you saw with that Arizona game, similar to what you saw in that Pittsburgh game with Calvin Austin with that backbreaking catch, similar to what you saw even in that Bengals game, that's the recipe for losses. And that's usually what Minter and company pride themselves on, is not giving. So, yes, this is kind of a redemption game for this defense going up against a big physical offense in Baltimore. Can they do it? Remains to be seen.
See what happens. I had nothing to add to that, Dan. Honestly, I was thinking about it, but I was like, yeah. It's all good points.
Guilty as charged says Chark has simply been passed on the depth chart, which is,
I mean, as of now, you can't chalk it up to any more than that because he was eligible to come off of IR in week 4. And we have been teased about his health for seemingly a few weeks now. And we still don't know. Last week against the Bengals, he was a healthy scratch. Maybe there was speculation during this time, Dan, that maybe they had to take him off of IR because it would have meant that if there was anything else or anybody else that they were going to sign again, that they would have had to sign that player to the active roster at that point in time. And maybe they would have been forced to put him on IR for an extended period of time. Who knows? But it's like I said, until I actually see DJ Chark out there on the field for more than one quarter of the game
with a catch,
then I will actually believe that we have turned the corner.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Let's see. Smash the like button. Yes, please. Thank you, Brad. Let's get to some of these questions. Kevin says it's a physical mismatch. LOL. Clive know he's not out there shedding guys for tackles for loss against tackles like Alt. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Let's see. Why do we glaze Lamar for MVP when he has Derrick Henry and 4 losses?
Well, look, I'll just say this. Wins and loss records, I get, but I don't think this is any different of an argument for a player. Go look at Patrick Mahomes when he was being talked about for MVP, when he had Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. I mean, it's no different. Yeah, he probably didn't have the same win-loss record as Baltimore did, but it's no different from a standpoint of that. It really is not. I get what you're saying because Derrick Henry has come in and transformed that offense, and we see how valuable Derrick Henry is, especially when you look at his touches are above 20 as opposed to when they're not, what their win-loss record is. But at the same time, don't diminish the type of player that Lamar Jackson is. I get it if you don't want to see him as the leader in the MVP race. That's fine. That's totally your opinion, and I respect that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that Lamar is not a fantastic player.
Does he have his limitations? Sure. Are there things that he is not as great as others? Yes. But there are things that he is absolutely elite, better than anybody else at as well. Does he throw pinpoint accuracy to the sidelines? No. Does he have to when he's that dynamic? You could argue no. So let's just keep it respectful here. Lamar Jackson's a MVP for a reason. He's probably going to win another one. Chris says Henley will have to play a big role, and I believe in him. Well, I'll switch it to the defense, Jake. I mean, I know there's a couple more matchups I wanted to do for this Chargers offense versus the Ravens defense. I think
we can jump back and forth.
Evergreen comment. Lad McConkey has an opportunity to dominate. Like you can say pretty much every week, especially against this secondary. It is fun seeing a Kyle Hamilton v. Derwin James. It totally has a mentor-mentee type. They are clones of each other. So we'll see how this defense utilizes each of them. Folks in the chat were talking about Hayden Hurst. Isn't it insane that we've heard nothing about Hayden Hurst? I think he had one big catch, if I remember right. It was a 25-yard catch earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Other than that.
And he's out this game. And God knows for how long, because he was injured apparently in practice on Friday. It sounds very eerily similar to the Asante Samuel Jr. situation that took place.
Crickets.
But Will Dissly has stepped up nicely in that role, hasn't he?
Okay, question for folks in the chat and for you, Jake. My tight end situation is a little thin for fantasy.
You're talking fantasy. Okay.
Fantasy. I picked up Will Dissly on waivers.
Smart.
Would you start him this week?
Yes.
I think I'm going to.
Do it.
I think I'm going to. I'm totally not going to lie. My fantasy team, Jake, has both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, who've been balling so far this year, and it has Lad McConkey. So I don't know.
Dan,
you
were this close to having 2 straight weeks in a row with Will Dissly with a passing touchdown. If it wasn't for the drop that he had 2 weeks ago, would have been a touchdown. He definitely didn't drop it last week against Cincinnati in triple coverage when Justin Herbert threw it to him. So trust me, I think that they like what they're seeing from Will Dissly as a pass catching option in this offense, and they're going to keep riding it.
Yeah, probably. I hope. Remember, Dissly is our Kelsey. That's something I don't think anybody thought they would be saying going into the season. But isn't it wild looking at the tight end situation on this team? And they're still 7-3.
Well, the best part is that I don't think anybody came into this season expecting Dissly to do much more than block. And now all of a sudden they've elevated his role because he's been throughout his career, he's been a very underrated pass catcher. And now look at the adjustment that the Chargers have made in utilizing him in the pass game. It's been good because not a lot of people are taking account of him, and that's been allowing him to get free.
Hey, everybody, and Jake and Dan. Hello, Brady. Let's see. If Brian's got a good point. If they weren't 4-7, Burrow is a clear-cut MVP. No argument for me. I mean, that guy is a stone-cold killer. And
the race to me right now for MVP is still so much in the air, whether you want to say it's Lamar, whether you want to say it's Jared Goff, whether you want to say it's Patrick Mahomes, whether you want to use...
No, it's not Mahomes.
I'm just saying, in terms of what people would say in the conversation, because most of the time, it's still going to be a quarterback, regardless of the position. It's hard to unseat the quarterbacks in that type of scenario. But however it is you want to slice it, I still think it's completely up in the air right now.
There's a question from Jason, and I think this is going to allude to what you and I were just talking about with the MVP discussion. When the team wins the next 3 games, what does that say about this team for the playoffs? Yeah, it's a big win. Big win.
Yep.
But let's just go down that path for a second. Hell, let's just say they win 2 of the next 3. We don't have to say next 3. 2 of the next 3. So they split with either Baltimore or Kansas City, and then they win the other game. What does that say for this team in the playoffs? That means they'll be 9-4. What does that say?
I think it shows.
How are you feeling about them in the playoffs?
It's feeling a hell of a lot better. I mean, I think that we were already optimistic with just the way that the team was playing, that you just wanted to get in and see what happens. You go through this next stretch, I think it shows that you're ready to contend with the AFC. And that not only could you win in the wild card round, but you can make a serious run at some of these teams, because regardless of what you want to say from the Chiefs in terms of their history and what they're going for in a three-peat, they have been susceptible in the way that they have won games this year. Chargers haven't still figured out that formula. It's been a while since they've done it. They're going to have an opportunity to go up against it in the next couple of weeks. But you look at that, you know, right now, I would say that Buffalo is an even bigger threat than Kansas City right now. Not just from the standpoint that they beat Kansas City, but just the way that they've been playing. I would say that if you go through this stretch with, you know, a positive win-loss record through the toughest part of your season this late in the game, it says something about what this team is ready for.
Talking about MVP, if they turn into 9-4, I think Justin Herbert climbs to top 3 in the MVP discussion, because usually it's the best quarterbacks on the best teams. And 9-4 in the AFC, when he beat Baltimore, he beat Cincinnati and or KC. I mean, he hasn't thrown an interception in like 15 years. His touchdown interception ratio is insane. I think he just passed his own record for most completions or attempts without an interception in a row. So I think the juicier matchup, in my opinion, of these two is going to be this Chargers defense versus Baltimore's offense. And the way I kind of think of it is, if we were looking at it overall, who has the check mark, the Chargers offense or the Ravens defense? Who would you say overall?
I would say that the Chargers offense has the check mark in that matchup.
Which, isn't that wild to think that, given how things started?
It's wild, but it's also looking at the elements here. The Ravens have had a number of injuries in their secondary.
Yep.
It's unlikely, not official, but unlikely that Roquan Smith is going to be able to suit up for this game.
which is huge. That is way bigger than Denzel Perryman not playing. Trust me.
So I think all that considered, that's where you get the check mark, because defensively, especially against the run, Baltimore can take away an opposing team's run game, no problem. And if you make them one-dimensional into what we've seen with this team, it can make things tough sledding. Not impossible, but tough sledding. So in this circumstance, with this current situation, with their injuries and what they have given up, we've seen what they've given up throughout the season. It's ripe for where the Chargers offense is going. If you were to ask me this same question a month ago, I don't know if I would have been as confident to say it. But over the last 5 weeks, I'm definitely confident in saying it.
Roquan Smith has the most tackles on this Baltimore team by 30. He is far and away the best player on this team. I mean, it's between him and Kyle Hamilton, but he's the most impactful player on this team, in my opinion. Losing him would be absolutely huge. And there's a comment here I wanted to bring it back up that Leo said, Chargers offense shows us something new every week. This is something that I am excited about. And you hear the coaching staff kind of talk about, all the cliches, get 1% better every day, better today than you were yesterday, better tomorrow than you were today. Getting better and better as the season goes on. The plane analogy that Jim Harbaugh always has on taking off, getting to 30,000 feet, whatever. This offense, in my opinion, has improved. And you've seen pretty stark improvements on this team in different spots. You've seen the offensive line shore up a lot of the issues they had early on with some of those communication issues. The inside part of things have gotten a little bit better. The penalties and miscues have gotten better. I think the receiving core has gotten better. Justin Herbert's gotten healthier and better. I think play calling has gotten better as a result of that. You can argue the running game has kind of been a little up and down, but on the whole, the offense is going in the right direction. So with what's better, Ravens defense versus Chargers offense, you're right. Like a month ago, I would have said, well, it's kind of bad on bad, weirdly. And now I think Ravens got a great run defense, bad pass defense. Chargers are kind of above average in both, I would say. So I give it to the Chargers there. But this is the juicier side. Great Chargers defense versus great Ravens offense. So good on good. How do they match up? And we'll see if Khalil Mack can play. I think that's a big one. This is a day where you want to have him there. But containing Lamar Jackson and keeping that fence in front, I think, is big. This is something where Poona Ford, Tyre Tart, I think, are going to have an impact on this game up in the middle. Hopefully we see some batted balls by Morgan Fox and company. But they said in the chat earlier, Deion Henley, this is the glow-up game for Deion Henley. What are your thoughts on this side?
Yeah, Dan. Again, it starts with stopping number 22. That's where it's going to start. You got to put all your focus into it. And when you look at just Baltimore had a very bad game last week against Pittsburgh. Not only was it against a division rival, but you look at everything that took place in that game. Derrick Henry has 13 carries. Baltimore turns the ball over 3 times. Justin Tucker misses 2 field goals. Those were just, it's very uncharacteristic of all of those elements to happen in a Baltimore game. So you know that they're going to come ready to play. And you know that they're going to be giving the rock to Derrick Henry as many times as they can, as long as he's giving positive yards. And they're going to try to mix things up with Lamar Jackson. And they're going to try to confuse this Chargers defense and find holes and exploit it. So it's going to be a very tough matchup. And I do like the Arizona comparison because I think it's very similar to that in terms of how that game ended up playing out and what they're going to be ready for. But since the Arizona game, I think you've seen a better performance out of your DBs, namely Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, who, as of right now, it looks like it's going in the wrong direction, the right direction, especially with him putting in some practice time towards the end of this week. He's still technically with a questionable label and still in concussion protocol. Be huge for the Chargers to have him tomorrow.
Super huge.
But Deion Henley, I think, is focus number 1. Whether or not his job is going to be stopping Derrick Henry on runs or him going to be spying Lamar Jackson, it's going to be critical when it comes to keeping this Baltimore Ravens offense in 3rd and long situations. How can you do that? I think over the past few weeks, as you mentioned, Dan, there was a period of time where the pass rush was a big question mark to me, that outside of Khalil Mack, where was the rest of the pass rush coming from? And in the last few weeks, you've seen guys like Poona Ford and Tyler Tart step up, and whether you're stopping the run or getting pressure from the interior and causing timing issues or getting after the quarterback, I think it's going to have to be another way that the Chargers can exploit this Ravens offense. Tackle-wise, the Ravens are pretty stout. So whether or not you're using Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack on stunts coming from the inside, or whether or not you're able to get push from your interior guys, one way or another, I think Jesse Minter is going to have a plan for that. But that's where you're going to have to exploit it.
There's some fun matchups to kind of go through here. And you think about kind of this Ravens offense and some of the guys that would scare you, right? Like, in my opinion, the things that scare me is obviously Lamar Jackson's legs, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers going off and turning something that's a 13-yard gain to a 60-yard gain to touchdown. Aguilar with the 170-yard touchdown bomb, I think, kind of gives me a little trepidation. But you look at this Chargers team and the matchups against those, I really like. I think like the tight end, Isaiah Likely, the Mark Andrews, you like the matchup with a Derwin James type. You think that's good there. In my opinion, Zay Flowers, I would probably do Tarheeb Still or Elijah Molden. Like, that's a good matchup. Both of those guys, I think, are very, very quick and agile. I think they can keep up with him. Bateman Aguilar, I think that's a really good matchup for Cam Hart and or Dean Leonard. I actually like both of those matchups against them. Big physical corners. The Chargers have the guys to go up against teams like this. And I think testament to Joe Ortiz and company, the one thing that they have to, I think this is going to be by committee, is going to be containing Lamar Jackson and bringing down Derrick Henry. And we've seen this Chargers team throughout the year, especially on defense, with that gang tackling presence where one guy comes and then the rest come in to finish it. That's going to be big here. And keep lane assignments and please be patient and do not try to bring Lamar Jackson down too far. I'm talking to you, Derwin James. Like, just go for the tackle. Don't go crazy. But yeah, I think this is about this Chargers team doing their job. Individuals got Bill Belichick mantra. So the matchups are there, but I like the Chargers guys to go up against them. Jake, are there any like mismatches that go the other way that maybe that you disagree with, that the Ravens like, oh no, that's Chargers are screwed?
I still think you have to look at Zay Flowers, and I think that they're going to take something from what they did to the Chargers last year. Now, again, granted, completely different defense. There was no Derrick Henry on this team last year when these two teams met up. It is interesting to see the trade-off that when a Derrick Henry comes, the utilization of what we've seen traditionally from Mark Andrews, and especially even Isaiah Likely after what he did in week 1 against the Chiefs, that it seems like it's totally gone away from that idea of the offense. I'm not sure if they're going to make any type of adjustment based off of where they could try to find holes in this Chargers secondary. It doesn't seem like you would have thought that they would have done it up to this point, and it doesn't seem like they have. And their formula is pretty much just going to be live in 3rd and short, give it to Derrick Henry, have Lamar run it when he can get free, or you're going to make these short type of dump off passes, or if there's a break in coverage, you're going to be able to score one long. I mean, Deontay Johnson, since he's been traded, hasn't even really been utilized on the team. So wide receiver wise, it's kind of a mystery. And I don't necessarily say it from a mismatch standpoint, but it's more so offensively in terms of the game plan, in terms of how the Baltimore Ravens have utilized them, because it's not their type of forte. So it's hard to say that, but based off of the stats and how they have traditionally won games, it's all through the running game, and that's going to set the pace.
Yeah, we've gone, 45 minutes? I haven't talked about Thule. And yes, Thule has had a fantastic season so far, and It's amazing that this Chargers team going into this game, again, we're now at week 12. We can still talk about a possibility of having Thule, Dupree, Mack, and Bosa all playing. Like, that was the goal. As you get into this stretch of the season that matters the most, you can have your guys ready to go. And it's going to be huge. And there is no coincidence here. Go back and look at the Ravens' losses. The 4 losses that this Ravens team has had are the 4 worst pass blocking grades of the entire season for this Ravens team. So if you can get to him smartly in Lamar Jackson, you have a great chance of winning. And this Chargers team has a front 4, front 7, front 6, you want to talk to the interior defensive line, that can do that. So this is one of those pin your ears back, like Chargers fans, this was built for this type of game. This Chargers team was built for this kind of game. So there's reason to be optimistic. You got a smart-ass coach on the defensive side going up against a very good offense. A great head coach going up against another great head coach. 2 great quarterbacks going up against each other. This is a primetime matchup that is fully justified. There's a couple people in the chat that are talking about some of the mismatches that I don't agree with. Cam Hart on Zay Flowers says Kevin is a win. I disagree. I do not want Cam Hart on Zay Flowers. Sure, it would help if he could press him, but if he can't put him in motion, he's effed.
Who would you have on Zay Flowers then in that circumstance?
I would either have Tariq Still, Elijah Moulton. Because if I'm Baltimore, I'm putting him in motion. And I'm not wanting Cam Hart on him in motion, in my opinion. And I don't think Cam Hart's great, but that's not the type of receiver he's great against. So I wouldn't do that. Same with Dean Leonard. I wouldn't put Dean Leonard on Zay Flowers. I'm putting Dean Leonard on the other guys, on Bateman. I'm putting him on Aguilar. Aguilar for sure. He's going to stretch the field. At least try to. So careful with some of these matchups because, yes, it could work if you press and win. But is that risk worth it? I would argue no. Let's see. Looks like Hart passed the protocol. Jake, did you see that?
I didn't see the official announcement. I know he was full practice, which is great. I know he was still technically labeled as questionable. I missed the news that he had officially got out of concussion protocol. If that's true, then hey, great.
I don't know. Kevin says, too much respect for these mid-wide receivers. I'm not saying that they're fantastic receivers. I'm just talking about the mismatch specifically. I think you got to be careful with how he was being utilized. Coaching, Jake. We're getting towards the end of this here. Folks, if you have questions or thoughts, comments, put them in there. We'll try to do our best to answer them. We'll go rapid fire here in a bit. What do you make of this coaching matchup? I mean, we could talk about it for days, but it's juicy. Cool because you know, and I gotta think that it's probably more on the Chargers side. You know how bad this Chargers team, these players and these coaches want to win this one for Jim. And I'm sure that's the case for John and the Ravens side, but I think it is so much more for Jim's side.
Well, yeah, considering
maybe that's just because he covered the Chargers team, but like
considering the fact that he's never beaten his brother since he's been in the NFL, yeah, that's a looming storyline over everything else. On top of that, Dan, there is something about winning a close game in the fashion that the Chargers did against the Cincinnati Bengals in primetime 1 week ago, because it shows that there is many ways for this Chargers team to win,
which is huge.
I'm not blind to the fact that Evan McPherson missed 2 field goals throughout that game. I'm not blind to that fact, but hey, plenty of teams win with a lot of luck on their side. I think it's just the way that the Chargers found a way to win that game when traditionally they would most likely lose those situations. Hence the phrase chargering that came into play for so many different years. You win a tough game like that, it does something to you as a team. And to think that you're going from one potent offense 1 week that was coming into the game against the Chargers, where they had not scored any less than 20 points aside from twice. last season, and they're the first team in the Bengals that put up more than 20 points that the Chargers had given up all season. Now you're coming up against an offensive buzzsaw that averages 30 points a game offensively. Here's the difference in this, Dan. Not only just from Jim Harbaugh's standpoint, and obviously going up against his brother and big-time matchups that you have to worry about on both offense and defense for the Baltimore Ravens, but there is a phrase that we have utilized on this show possibly any more times that we ever have in the last 5 years of doing Chargers Unleashed.
Oh.
And that is preparation. Because Jesse Minter burns the candle at both ends when it comes to game preparation. In addressing the comment earlier about Greg Roman having this offense look differently every week, I think it speaks true to his words of what he was saying during the preseason, that they were going to prepare for every opponent in a different way, that they weren't going to prepare for them in the same old fashion and have the same game plan every week. And I think the way that they have gone back to the drawing board since the bye week, when you were sitting at 2-2, and what you have been able to do since then, and how this offense has evolved, it's going to speak volumes, Dan. And it's another primetime matchup. It's Monday Night Football. There's so much connective tissue here between the Chargers and the Ravens that just makes this for such an enticing football game.
Here's a stat for you, Jake. And this is why I think the Chargers defense versus the Ravens offense is by far the juicier of the two matchups if we're talking about sides. The Ravens offense is the best red zone percentage offense in the NFL. Number one. The Chargers defense is the second best red zone percentage defense in the NFL.
FYI, you just got done facing the second ranked red zone offense in the Cincinnati Bengals last week.
So great on great. Great red zone defense of the Chargers, great red zone offense by the Ravens. This Ravens offense, third best third down percentage in the entire NFL. Conversions, third best. Chargers, second best. Great on great. Can this Chargers defense get Lamar and team off the field on third down? And can they limit them to field goals in the red zone? Those, in my opinion, will dictate who wins this game. If I had to close my eyes, fast forward to about 8:30 Monday night, if I just looked at two stat lines, red zone scoring and third down conversions, that's what will win this game. And that scares the shit out of me because this is good on good, and both teams are great at these things. So, I don't know. J.M. Taylor, 1984. Chargers can win with Magic. It's okay. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Give me Magic. 24 karat. Bruno Mars. Yes, I don't care. Give me Magic. I'll win any way possible. I do not care. Laus de Bruin. Roman will want to show off his Chargers offense, expecting some trick plays. What do you think?
Well, we've seen one flea flicker option this season. We've seen a couple end arounds to Jalen Reagor that didn't end up resulting in much positive yards.
It ended around 0.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'll say cook with what you got, because right now you build off of that first half in Cincinnati and you try to execute that for the better part of 4 quarters. That's what I would go with.
Kevin says, I love you, Dan. Watch the first snap on defense tomorrow with 20 on Flowers. We will share a laugh next stream. If it's on press and Zay's not moving, I'm fine with it. But if Zay's moving, I do not want camp traveling with him. Just me. But yes, if you're right, I'll give it to you. Athir is here, Jake. Oh, Athir is sick. I'm sorry, buddy. Maybe he's sick of all these crazy, bold, amazing, positive predictions. That's what got him sick. We'll see. John Smith says, whatever happens, happy with the direction this rebuilt team is going at 7-3. Better than I thought with 10 games. Go Bolts. So again, like perspective. This Chargers team is 7-3 right now, guys and gals. 7-3. You can talk about all the things that are bad and all the things that can be improved and all the mistakes they've made. All the holes in the roster. They're 7-3 in the 5 seed right now, regardless. So in spite of all of that, and in spite of all the injuries and all the misses that people want to talk about with the free agency, there's not many, but there's some. They're 7-3. So this is the perspective of year one, Jim Harbaugh, gutted roster, brings in Joe Ortiz and company, and immediately culture shifts. They win games. Charging is a thing of the past, at least temporarily, and they're in the playoffs. Like, going into the season, if you had to fast forward and say that's what we're going to get, you would take that and run to the bank. Kevin, our red zone defense, high red zone plus Justin Tucker being broken. Check. Ugh. I hope that remains true for one more week. Don't do this to us, Kevin. Do not let Justin Tucker give us... I can't even talk about that. Robert says, Jake, if Roquan Smith doesn't play Monday night, then Gus Bus and JK we need to pound the rock.
P.S. Dan, have you heard the exact quotes from both J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards as it relates to going up against their former team?
I didn't hear Gus's, but I heard J.K.'s of like, we need to beat their ass or something.
J.K.'s first of all, he's such a nice guy. So it almost was literally like the same quote. But when it came to going up against their former team, Gus just had a little bit more extra juice behind it in terms of saying like, yeah, we want to go in there and beat them. And it's definitely a revenge game. And that's the way that we're looking at it. And I definitely want to get them back. So again, for a number of different reasons, especially I think looking at Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, I think you're going to see a much more familiar two-back system with them for the better part of 4 quarters outside of what we saw last week in Gus Edwards essentially disappearing from the offense. I think you're going to want that in a situation like this type of a game where you're on offense and you can create some of those 6 to 8 minute drives that can keep Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on the sidelines. And maybe you learned a little something. As good as Justin Herbert looked last week, you saw what certain situations in when you go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out can do to your defense. So maybe you become a little bit more balanced throughout the course of this game. And even if it works, don't stop pounding the rock, especially when you have a matchup like this and 2 running backs that can get you yards.
And even if it doesn't work, like there can be purpose to, all right, guys, hold on. Let's give our defense a break here. Let's slow this thing down. Let's take 3 minutes off the clock if we can. Worst case, we'll run it 3 times, take off 2 minutes, call timeout in between. Like there's ways where you can, if you're, again, you don't want to think that way. But if you're at a point where you've gone 3 and out a bunch of times and taking those shots, and you can game plan to give your defense a break here for a second. Eduardo says, do you think fatigue will play a factor in late quarters, having Lamar scrambling and Henry running downhill? It could. You saw what happened in Arizona.
If that ends up happening, it's going to be a long day. And this is going to be one of those type of games that's going to stress you out towards the end of it. Because if they're able to run their type of offense and continuously and stretch it into the 4th quarter, that's going to be tough for the Chargers to overcome.
Athir with a $2 donation. Jake, I heard my voicemails. I will say this, and then didn't say anything. I don't know what this is going to be, but we'll see.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Okay.
If there was one bona fide mismatch for this Chargers team, and you can pick either side, where Chargers have the clear advantage here, they got to win, what would that be for you?
If you're able to get any semblance in the running game, I'm not going to say this as a mismatch. I'm going to say if the Chargers are able to execute this, then they should be able to handle the game. If you're able to run the ball and stay ahead of the sticks for a majority of the game, you should be able to execute the mismatches that you have in the secondary very, very well. Obviously, I think that Lad McConkey should be ripe for another big game in this particular matchup against the Ravens. I think Quentin Johnston has another opportunity for that, considering the DBs or lack thereof that's going to be out there for this particular matchup. I'd be interested to see who's going to be covering who in certain situations, where Kyle Hamilton's going to be spying on, where he's going to be, because he's been their best defender when it's come against coverage touchdowns. But if you're able to get the run game going and have it be going consistently, then this works right into your game plan for where you can exploit those mismatches in the secondary.
A Thier with a $5 donation. Follow up. No, Dan, I'm not sick. I am sad. I was late. Okay. Jake, my bro, I will give your flowers. Ravens will score 24 instead of 14. Guess what? We score 45. So he's predicting 45-24.
If I remember correctly, the prediction from Athir was that we were just going to bum rush the Bengals.
It was like 30. It was 30. No. I think he had a thing against the Ravens where he said it's going to be like 30-13 or
30. Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, again, against the team that averages 30, I just still, and look, if last week's Pittsburgh game did not happen for the Ravens, I would say maybe it's a semblance of getting a shot. But there were so many things that went against the Ravens, both self-inflicted and things that don't normally happen to them, i.e. the Justin Tucker situations, 3 turnovers and giving Derrick Henry the ball only 13 times. You're not going to see that again in that type of situation. So as good as it looked for the Chargers defensively in the first half last week against Cincinnati, I think this is going to be another situation where you're going to have to score more than 20 points to win this game, because I feel that Baltimore is more than capable of getting over that 20 mark.
Lyle De Bruin says Thule versus their right tackle, and if the interior holds up and give Herbert enough of a clean pocket to pick apart their DB. So Thule versus their right tackle. It's a good one. But again, I think that's probably the advantage that I would say is the Chargers defensive front right now. They should be able to feast, at least to get in the backfield and disrupt plays like that. That's the recipe for them.
Well, they're going to have to. They're going to have to.
They can do that and give this outperforming secondary an opportunity to continue to do what they're doing. Get Elijah Molden's hand on some more balls. Derwin James can get crazy. Cam Hart, Tarib still. That's the recipe. That's the recipe. Kevin, Chiefs big return to start the game, and Hansen on red zone is already screaming like a maniac. I miss it. We're 5 minutes into football. Did the Chiefs already get something? Great.
Well, I mean, that should have been expected. They're going up against the Carolina Panthers.
Yes, and someone actually just said, I've never been a Carolina Panthers fan. Where was it? Big Carolina Panthers fan today. I've never made fun of Bryce Young ever. Okay, a couple more, Jake, and then we'll get out of here. They lost to the Ravens. Wow. No, they didn't. They lost to the Raiders. After we smacked the Raiders in the mouth. We are a tougher team. Again, any given Sunday. But, like I said, the Ravens have some ugly losses.
Let's just remember who both head coaches are just for a second. Let's just remember that for a second. And let's not use the barometer of the Raiders in a circumstance of measuring which team is tougher in this circumstance. It's going to be a very tough game on Monday for the Chargers to get to. Using the Raiders for a win-loss advantage in this circumstance, I don't think is the right way to look at it. I would say the way that the Chargers beat the Raiders in week 1, while impressive and great, that's a very different offense than what they were now. The Ravens, in that same type of circumstance against them, made some similar mistakes in terms of why they lost. And trust me, they're going to be pissed off coming into Monday Night Football, because now they just watched the team that beat them lose to Cleveland on Thursday, and they want to try to get another leg up in the AFC North and get that one back.
We haven't talked about this, Jake. As we wrap this thing up, forgotten locale, important news. Not to mention, we're wearing the navies, and those things are cursed. Have they ever won in those? Honestly, Someone has to know the answer to that, but I don't think I've seen many.
Hey.
And Josh says Navy uniforms are the ugliest. I love the Navy uniforms, to be honest.
Look at it this way. Maybe this is an opportunity. You get 1 week in the Cincinnati Bengals game where you let a team come back, tie the game. You have a dramatic finish in the last 45 seconds. You're able to put that game away on a last second swat from Derwin James on a Hail Mary attempt. Remember, we were all talking about the possibility of Chargering returning, and then it didn't. Maybe this is a good time to lift a curse in Navy uniforms.
I was just going that route. You think Jim Harbaugh's like, oh, we're never going to F that. Jim Harbaugh's like, yeah, cool. Another box to check. Let's go. I'm with you. Yeah, I like a lot of people with you, Jake. We are breaking our curses this season. Yes. Athir has a question, Jake. Under $5 donation. Athir, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Why are the Chargers fans upset about the Thursday night game? Our team had no bye since week 5. We need it, please.
Well, it's not for the reasons that you think it is. It's more so from the standpoint of plans that were already made, people that already bought tickets, having a game flexed.
Logistics.
Yes, logistics of it, traveling, everything that they need for that weekend. That's more of the situation behind it than anything else. Obviously, seeing the Chargers anytime in primetime is always nice, but when it comes to people attending the game, especially in December, when we're talking about right before Christmas, it's not the easiest things to change around certain plans.
Kevin says Harbaugh won a natty in Navy. Harbaugh blood type is Navy. Harbaugh bleeds Navy. I'm with you.
Hey, there you go. I didn't even think about that. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, Kevin, well done, my friend. That was good. Thomas, $5 donation. Thank you, Thomas. Just want to say you guys rock. I love all you put out. Let's go get them tomorrow. Bolt up. Rock on, fellas. Thomas, thank you. Appreciate you and appreciate everybody out there. Jake, you've made it. Are you ready? God. Folks in the chat, you can get a head start as we go through ours. Bold predictions and final predictions.
Last week I felt really good about my Quentin Johnston bold prediction, especially after he got his first touchdown. I'm like, okay, we're getting this. I could feel this. We're going to get it. And then DJ Turner said, F that, Jake. I'm not allowing that to happen. And every single pass seemingly that went to Quentin Johnston for the rest of the game, he did a great job in defending it and just basically shut that opportunity down. So where do I go with this? I'm not going wide receiver this week. I'm not going wide receiver.
Really?
No, because to me, Lad McConkey and in a semblance, QJ would seem like low-hanging fruit. I've made bold predictions with GJ Chark before, but he hasn't even entered the field, so I can't even put a bold prediction on that.
Fair.
I think they keep the train rolling with Will Dissly, man. I think they keep the train rolling with Mr. Will Dissly.
My fantasy team hoped you're right.
And I think he goes over 80 yards and a touchdown in this one. I think they like what they've seen from him. Again, I told you, Dan, he is one drop away from having a touchdown in 2 straight games. I think they're going to want to feed him the ball again as that underrated weapon in the passing attack. I got Will Dissly this week.
Oh, imagine the euphoria on my fantasy roster if that happened. That'd be fantastic. Feeling here. Lad, 2 touchdowns from Chris.
Definitely feasible. And maybe the reason I didn't pick Lad is because it doesn't seem that bold to do, given the matchups and given the way he played last week. I would love to see Lad cook all day. Trust me, watching him play is just beautiful to watch. But this is bold predictions, and I just didn't want to take the easy way out.
I feel like KG on the Celtics. It's like, everything is possible. Like, that's how I feel anytime Lad has the ball. I'm like, yeah, like, to your point, I don't really feel like he can do it all. He can do it all. Like he's not like that bona fide one, like the AJ Brown types or he's not that kind, but he's a different kind of menace that I love. Lyles Bruin says, so smart or Tucker Fisk get a touchdown. That could be fun. Squeezy. Love that name. Here's one. Herbert throws for 350 and scores 4 tutties. I mean, enter the chat for MVP if that happens for sure.
Damn.
Thanks, guys. Let's get to 8-3. And then dose of reality from our friends over here. Forgotten locale. I think the odds are too stacked against us for this one. I hope I'm wrong. 20-17 Ravens. I get it. I get it. This is a tough one. Bold prediction for me. I talked about this Chargers defense and the one mismatch that I think that they can exploit, and I think it is that defensive front. I'm going to go this. See, we don't know if Mack is going to play, but I think he is.
He said that he's going to play. He says that even though he's
got
got the questionable tag,
play.
I understand that, but I think he's gotten a bigger week of practice this week, and he even said, "I'm not practicing for no reason." You know, he's the type of guy who, to me, would literally find a way to play if he broke both of his legs and would still find a way to play.
I'm going to go. I think this is, to my point earlier, Jake. I think this is the game where you're going to see anybody and everybody play their ass off for
you're going to need
Jim Harbaugh. And you saw how Derwin James was at the end of that last victory, you know, screaming and hugging coach and all smiles in the post-game locker room celebration, the victory speech and all that. I think this is one where you're going to see some of those veterans just go to absolute war. And so I'm looking at Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Bud Dupree, Thule, but Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa specifically. I'm going Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. I'm going 4 sacks between those two. I think this defensive line is going to go cray-cray. I would love it. Absolutely love it.
Before we get into the final prediction here, here's a little side bold prediction that I have. And this is very bold considering the current status of where we're at right now. And we'll obviously wait for some elevations possibly today before roster time. But we talk about all the connective tissue.
There's one. I was just thinking about this one.
We talk about all the connective tissue between the Baltimore Ravens and the Los Angeles Chargers. And the only reason I bring this up is because AJ Finley currently, as it stands right now, has a questionable tag heading into this game. Would it not be fortuitous for Tony Jefferson to be elevated from the practice squad for this game and to come in there to bolster the Chargers secondary at the safety position?
Tony Jefferson. Yes, please. Just got a text from the director. Forgot he's coming to the game tomorrow. Yes, I'll be there. Folks in the chat, who's going to the Chargers game tomorrow? This is going to be crazy. I'm so pumped for this game. This is probably the one that I'm most excited for.
It's like the old adage, you know, you build it and you will come. Jim Harbaugh asked for everybody to show up last week against the Bengals. I guarantee you they will be showing up this week.
Chris Pepper, prediction 24-24. And then star of the game is a pick 6 from a DB. So is that 31-24? Is that what we're saying for the Chargers? Maybe? Josh says 23-20 Chargers in another nail biter.
It's going to be close. It's going to be close, honestly.
Reality check. First pick 6 for the Bolts defense. Ooh, got a few people talking about pick 6s here, Jake. How about Chargers getting their first pick 6? Tar Heel still, first pick 6. We got the underdogs at home. Perfect scenario. Darth Dan, here we go. Lamar throwing 2 interceptions. Henley pick 6. Tony Jefferson revenge game. I'm all for it. 27-31 Chargers, says Chris. Jake, final score prediction.
I got it 30-27 Chargers. Again, I think it's going to be another nail biter. I think this is going to be
Jake Hefner.
I think this is just another situation to where it's just going to come down to it. I think the Chargers are going to be able to do a lot offensively, but again, we're talking about a team now in the Ravens, maybe not as desperate of a situation that you found yourself with the Bengals last week. But they're now playing for seeding in the playoffs, and they just watched their division leader go down on Thursday Night Football, and they want to get that game back.
But they're
and
not.
Now I'm just saying their mentality. But I think Jim Harbaugh, above all else, says, I want to get my first win against my brother. And I think the rest of the team is going to play for that too.
30-27?
30-27, yeah.
I don't think my heart can take this.
Trust me, I can't either. I hate making predictions like this. I am hooked. I've been hooked up to an oxygen machine for the past 4.5 years. I don't like it anymore. I don't like making predictions like that. I hope that I'm wrong. But let's also measure the quality of opponent that is on the other side and what they just came off of in a tough loss. And they're also going to be pissed off coming into Los Angeles as well.
I can't do it.
Oh my God, Dan.
Look, I've talked all season about tethering hope and optimism to reality.
It's been your motto all season.
And I'm torn because the previous reality is this Chargers team does not win this game. The entire history of this Chargers team over the decades, the Chargers do not win this game. And then the Chargers go out and do what they just did this past week. And so it gives me that hopium injected in my veins that this Chargers team can somehow go 8-3 and beat the Ravens. And I want to so bad say that they're going to. And I'm going to be in attendance. God damn it.
I don't think I've ever heard you freak out this much about a final score prediction.
My heart is telling me that the Chargers are going to win this game. But my head is telling me that this Ravens team is just a juggernaut, man.
Wow.
My heart is telling me that Jesse Minter, Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, all the vets, everyone's going to play their ass off and make sure that they can find no way that this Chargers team loses. But then I just see Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and it scares the shit out of me. Like, being honest. That's what scares the shit out of me. F it. 30-28. Chargers. I'm going to go 30-28.
$1, Bob.
30-28 Chargers. Chargers will be
$1, Bob.
No. Chargers are going to be losing, and Justin Herbert finds a way at the end of the game to get a field goal as time expires. Similar to what we saw. Oh, this is going to go back to bite me, but you know what?
Oh my God, Dan, what the hell, dude? I really thought, especially after the Cincinnati game, hearing you when you took over the instant reaction show, that you kind of put Darth Dan in a box and threw it away for a little while. You have never had that much trouble making a final score prediction. And now we're talking about a Chargers team with a 7-3 record, when traditionally at this point of the year, the Chargers would be something like 2-5, and you'd make the final score prediction like that.
I would say the Chargers win too, by the way.
That was hilarious, but I'm glad you ultimately, after all that ranting, finally hit the fuck it button and just let it ride.
Man, I hope I'm not wrong. I will be in attendance, so pray for me. Chris, stream after the game. Jake, this might be on you. So depending on how this thing goes, I'm going to be in the car. I'm going to be at SoFi. So I don't know how much I'll be able to do. So Jake, maybe you can. We'll see how this thing goes. So stay tuned, folks. Who knows? I'm not sure. Reality says listen to your heart. I hope so. I hope the Chargers team wins. Again, the hopium and reality are two fickle bunches. Jake, anything else? We've gone a little over today. I apologize. That took me too long. Section 204, shout out to Chris and folks. 3427 says the other Dan. Chargers win. Jake, parting words.
Monday Night Harbaugh. Let's go to work.
Man, I'm going to be so stressed. Pray for my mental health during this game. Chargers, Ravens, Harbaugh Bowl 2024, Monday Night Football Primetime. Don't forget, 323-902-7586 is the number to the hotline. Call in during the game. Leave us your reactions during, after, before, whatever you want. And if you have not done so already, this little giveaway we'll be announcing tomorrow. Signed custom Tuli Tuipolo 2 jersey up for grabs. That's pinned to our X profile. All you got to do is like, retweet, follow, and I believe just send a screenshot reply to X, and you will be entered. We'll announce that prior to the game. Bold fan, y'all are the best. We love doing these live shows. Do us a favor, hit that like, subscribe on YouTube. Takes 2 seconds. Hopefully, we'll be able to go to 8-3. Hopefully, we'll have brisket Tuesdays. Hopefully, I will be a little tipsy tomorrow after a victory.
You better.
And I will be able to go nuts, and we can all enjoy this. Leo says, history tells me no. Future tells me yes. I hope to all things holy you are correct. For Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake D. Hefner, myself at Dan W. Sports. Guys, gals, children of all ages, thank you so much for tuning in to Chargers Unleashed and being a part of this ride with us. And we will talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed. Enjoy football, everybody. Red Zone. Let's go have some fun.